Welcome to the demo, baking one, soft rolls. I've already got my ingredients scaled, or our mise en place, and I'm going to go on over some of the things that you're going to need. So let me move these up to the top. Definitely need something to clean and sanitize with your tabletop, so let's do that real quick. Get that out of the way. And I could have skipped this step, but I have learned after all these years that I can't get the damn tissue out of there. Then take nothing for granted these days. So we're going to give her a good rub down. Now, you don't necessarily need a wooden table or a wooden bench to do this dough on. If you have a wooden cutting board that's fairly large, you could use that, but it's not necessary. You can do it on your kitchen countertop where you have laminate or formica or quartz or granite, anything like that. Granite works pretty good. Not real porous, but because we're kind of doing these videos now, I'm kind of going to wait, and I'm just going to do it on here, so let me pause for a minute. Alright, let's talk about the things that you're going to need to put this project together. First thing you're going to need is a mixing bowl, and you want to make sure that it's large enough to hold the amount of flour that you're going to be using today. I was just fortunate enough to have a metal bowl, and I'm going to be using that today because once I finish this, I'm going to put it in my oven. I turned the oven on earlier and turned it off. I have a temperature inside. I'm trying to get it at about 80 degrees, so it'll aid in the fermentation process and help the dough rise quicker. I did go wash my hands, by the way, so I'll need the bowl. What else are we going to need for this? I'm going to put this under the bowl so it doesn't mess up the table. Next thing you're going to need is a measuring cup, so you can measure your flour. The recipe that I gave you calls for cups. When you scoop a cup of flour up, you just want to shake it and then take a knife and level it off at the top. You don't want to pack it down. If you pack it down, you're going to change the original weight of the ingredient. So for instance, I mentioned yesterday that a cup of flour weighs about 5.1 to 5.3 ounces, so I actually put it on the scale today, and I've had remembered correctly. I was coming in at 5.1 and 5.2. So that's kind of how I've been working on scaling these recipes back so that you don't have to have a digital scale to do the measuring. You're also going to need your measuring spoons. You're going to need some type of a Pyrex glass or cup so you can measure your milk, because the milk needs to be heated to roughly 100 degrees, and I have already heated this, so I've got my Bitherm in there so I know that my milk's at the right temperature. You're also going to need, I just have a bench scraper, which is metal. I'm going to try and use it very lightly on this table. Try not to if I possibly can. But what you want to use your plastic bowl scraper. Similar to this, but it has a round edge on it so that you can actually scrape on the inside of the bowl. So what I'm going to use to start is I'm going to use this plastic spatula in place of a dough mixer scraper. Next thing that you're going to need for this recipe is sheet pan. And with your sheet pan, you don't want to bake anything directly on the pan, otherwise it's going to stick. So what we want to do is, if you have one of these rubber Silpat mats, you can put that down. I just happen to have one, so I'm going to go ahead and use that for my baking demo purposes. It's a little bit easier to clean. But if you have parchment paper in your cabinet, like the parchment paper we used when we were in the 2 cooking classes, that works nice because once you bake it, they brown really nice on the bottom, and then when you're done, you tear them off and you throw the paper away, so there's really nothing literally to clean. You'll need some cooking spray if you don't have parchment, or if you don't have one of these. If you're going to use just your pan, you're going to want to lightly spray the bottom of your sheet pan, just lightly dusting it. You won't need to put any additional flour on top of it or dust it, and that'll keep your rolls from sticking to your pan if you have neither this nor the parchment paper. Alright, so I've got my the mise en place ready. I've already scaled off the ingredients to save a little bit of time for us. And I'm going to begin the process. Alright, first thing is I've got my room temperature butter that was called for in the recipe, and this has been sitting out for about 4 hours now, so it's nice and soft. You want to have a soft butter that you can work with, and we're going to put the butter in here, in this bowl. Then I've got my sugar that I scaled off. I'm going to add my sugar to the bowl. Going to give that a quick stir. And try and break up the chunks of butter a little bit. And I don't need to be smooth. I'm not making a cake batter because I'm going to be kneading this as we progress with this dough. Alright, to that I have 2 eggs, so I'm going to go ahead and add 2 eggs to the bowl. Remember, when you crack an egg, you don't want to crack it on the edge of something, because if the shell splits, it'll go in your product and you may or may not see it, and you serve it to a family member or a guest and you're not real happy. So we just 2 light taps on the table. We'll put that egg in there. Get my next egg. Crack it. Make sure I don't see any of the whites going inside. And we'll move those to the side. Wipe my hands off. And we're going to give this a little mix, and it's going to kind of look a little bit funky, like it's trying to curdle on us. Alright, next thing I'm going to add is yeast. We've got Fleischmann's instant yeast for this. You can get this at the grocery store. It's typically in the dry baked goods sections in the grocery store where the flours and sugars are held. Nice thing about these, it's like it says, it's fast acting. So this has actually been grown in a cultured environment. It's a bacteria, and once it's been grown, then they actually use a freeze drying process to turn this into instant granules. And the nice thing about this is, if I had fresh yeast, I would be taking fresh yeast, which comes in chunks, and I would be hydrating that in warm water, and then I would add it to my recipe. But when we're using this fast-acting yeast, it's not necessary. So I'm going to go ahead and open it. You go, well, how do you know if you have enough? Well, the recipe was based on a package of this, and it says on the back of the package that 1 package is equal to 1/4 of an ounce, or approximately 2 1/4 teaspoons, which is what we need. And I did go ahead and measure it, and it is fact what it said it was going to be. So I'll open that up. Put my yeast in. Now, alternatively, when we are doing this in the bake shop kitchen, typically we would have whatever our liquid ingredient is first into the mixing bowl, and then a liquid, usually depending on how quick we want the dough to ferment, maybe 80 to 100 degree water and or milk. But for this process, because we're going to be kneading by hand, we're not going to tear it up. So you can see on the secondary camera that it looks like it's curdled right now, but it's okay. It's not going to hurt anything. Now I'm going to add my milk. That has been preheated. I heated this in the microwave for about 35 to 40 seconds until I had the right temperature. And now, little mix. Add my flour. Now, this is 4 cups of flour. In the recipe I gave you, I think it said 4 to 5 cups. And it also says what I wanted you to do is start off with around 4 or 4.5 cups. And get that mixed up. We can add additional flour to that as necessary, because you're just learning and you're at home. I'm not really there to help you. I'm going to start low so we can see if it's too wet and decide what we want to do as far as adding more flour to it, because we don't want to change the recipe by adding more flour. We want to keep it as minimal as we can to make sure that the flour gets hydrated. Next thing is salt. Key thing about salt and yeast do not like each other. Salt will inhibit yeast being able to grow. It will actually kill the yeast. So these 2 steps are never added or mixed together. They're always added separate. So I'm just going to sprinkle this over the top of the flour, and we'll go ahead and mix it in. mixing process. And one thing I didn't do is I don't have an extra cup of flour, so if this is too wet, I'm going to have to go and get some.
Also, you can use one of these, but like I said, before you're going to be using your bench scraper, your plastic
bowl scraper that are generally used for mixers, so we can get ingredients out of a mixer. And as you can see, the mixture's kind of dry and it's shaggy looking, and that's pretty good, because what we're going to do now is we're going to dump this out onto the table and we're going to start our kneading process. And so I'm going to pause my talking and let you think about that. We talked about doughs yesterday. What does the kneading process mean? Think about that and then continue. Now I'm going to go ahead and get in with my hands. And I'm going to start mixing this by hand. Mashing it down, mashing the flour in, spinning it around, trying to get all of that flour incorporated into our dough. And I can see we've got some butter down there trying to hide, so we're going to make sure that that gets incorporated in our dough. This is the fun part of baking. You get to use your hands, you get to mix stuff, and you get to make it with love, like I like to say. I think you'll find that if you're able to find supplies, maybe you can get them shipped to you from a grocery store like Publix, food lines. Some of the food lines are delivering. We've also gotten stuff here from Fresh Market. I know there's Fresh Markets in several areas of town in Charlotte. So you could order some flour and some eggs and some milk. You probably already have milk if you have any family members at home that love their milk. So you can see the dough now is starting to come together, and I'm able to work with it, and I've got just about everything off of the bottom. It feels just a little bit soft, and that's okay. Here's what I want to show you right now. So right now, if I take this dough and I just stretch it and I pull it, it just kind of comes apart. It's still nice and shaggy. So what does that mean for us? Well, that means if I was to go ahead and form this and bake it, this basically would not have enough strength or tension on the top of the skin to form a roll as it baked in the oven. So that's why we have to knead it. So now I'm going to take it out of the bowl. We're going to put it on the table. I'm not going to put any extra flour down. I'm going to leave it like this. It may stick a little bit. I'll be able to get it off hopefully. So when we're doing the kneading, what you want to do is you want to push the dough out. Start your timer so that you know how long you're kneading it for. You're going to pull it back in, turn it, knead some more, pull it back in, turn it, knead it some more, and you just keep having fun with it. You can see it's just a little bit sticky here, but it's really not doing too bad. So I'm kind of happy with where it is. Again, why are we doing this? Gluten. We talked yesterday on the webinar about gluten. How do we form the gluten strands? Why is the gluten important to us? Because we're building structure. So once I get in, I'm not that far in, but what I'll do is, once I transfer this over to the video program, I'll go ahead and put this kind of in hyper speed. I think you've got the motion down now. eating that rascal. So look at where our dough is right now. You see how it's starting to spring back in a little bit. It's already starting to develop the gluten. If I do that pull test, it's still a little bit stringy. But need that, get it to work out. Kind of fun, huh? Yeah. So this is one of those things when you're learning to be a baker, or you're learning to be a cook for that matter, it's just repetition. You do the same thing over and over and over and over and over again until you get it perfected. I watched a documentary on television, chef in France said that in order to perfect his craft, he had well over 50,000 hand hours just to get his hands trained to do the work so that products come out the way they're supposed to perfectly. Thought that was an interesting thing. I thought, good grief, got that many hours? Why won't I let you use a mixer? Because I don't have a mixer. And if I did, I probably wouldn't use the mixer anyway. Something I made with my hands. Ooh. 5 minutes left. Where's my assistant when I need help needing? Nothing. My wife's been working from home too, so it's been interesting. She's on the phone all the time with her job, sourcing supplies for this COVID mess. So her first charge about 2 weeks ago was to find these masks that nobody has, that nobody could find, because New York was in such bad shape. So that was one of her tasks, and she found a bunch of N95s, and they all got shipped to New York. Well, and some in California, I guess, but so that's kind of what her company does. Small part of the healthcare. So shout out to all you nurses. Shout out to all you firemen, police officers, everybody on the front lines. Big shout out to my grocery folks. First time I went out and the shelves were wiped out, I was thinking, oh, this is going to be bad. This is going to be really bad. But things eased up a little bit. People seem to stop hoarding quite as bad. And luckily, they started that delivery thing. That's just been a savior, a blessing. So in the 3 weeks we've been here, I've literally been out 3 times. Each time to the grocery store. So look, you see I hadn't put any extra flour on the table, and how nice it is. So that just dough recipe, that first scaling that I did with the 4 cups, 4.5 works perfect. See, she's really getting tough now. So you've woken up an animal. Now, I didn't talk about what kind of flour I was using. I'm not using a bread flour. I'm just using an all-purpose flour. The only bag I was able to find when I went out hunting for flour. So demos may be limited, but doing what I can for you. Anyway, it was a unbleached flour, which means it's a little bit darker in color, but they haven't stripped all the nutrients out of it by bleaching it and trying to add some other chemical goodies in there. So hopefully this will taste just delicious. Also, if we were using bread flour for this, because you had looked up what are the percentages for bread flour, 12.5 to 15% protein. And the protein is what causes the gluten to develop. So the higher the protein, more gluten. And I would probably be sweating right about now, which is okay. Hey, looky here, I got about 40 seconds left, and then we can check it. Now, if you get tired, say you get 5 minutes in, take a break. Pause your timer. Cover the bread. Make sure it's covered so no air gets to it. You don't want it to start drying out. Take you a little 5-minute breather. Grab your can of Sprite. Wipe the sweat off your brow. Hear that? That's a beautiful thing. Alright, thank you. So look at our dough now. It's pretty nice, yeah? Watch this. Alright, here's some of the signs we're going to see once we develop the gluten. Number one, if I press it, it should be able to spring back. See how my fingerprint's slowly going away? That's a good sign. If it was too wet and I pinched the dough like this, and it was real tacky, I know I would need to sprinkle just a little bit of flour on to start working the dough. Okay. Now, I'm going to go just one more minute. Make sure she's good. Developed. Let's do the window pane test. Window pane? I thought there was a baking. Alright, so I'm going to cut off a little piece of dough. Careful on my table. You can see how that stayed together real nice. Nice and smooth. Okay. So for the window pane test, what we want to do is we want to stretch this out into a rectangle. And use our fingers and kind of smash it out a little bit. And then start pulling it. Nice and easy. And I'm just going around, I'm pulling. Ever so slightly. So what I'm checking to see how much actual gluten did I develop. Does it try to snap? How thin can I get this? I want to be able to get it super thin so that if I look at it up against the light, I should be able to see through it. You can see my fingers are not coming through when I press on it, so that's good. It's actually perfect. It's nice and stretchy. Okay, got give to it. And now I'll split the wind to center. And you should be able to see the light coming through. Like so. So that is your window pane test. That means that you have developed all the gluten that you were hoping for. So we'll just kind of tuck that back in there. What do we do next? Well, I'm going to kind of get this back into a ball shape now that I kind of made it mad. And I'm going to pop that right back into my bowl. And at this point you want to cover this with a sheet of saran wrap, or you can use a tea towel or whatever type clean kitchen towel that you might have on hand. And then we're going to let this rest for about 2 hours. I'm going to stick mine in the warming oven like I mentioned because I want the fermentation to happen a little bit closer. We always do what is known as proofing bread. This stage here, if we were actually in the big shop, would be considered bench resting, and that's so that all that gluten can relax and the rubber bands are not quite as tight. And then we'll go on to the next step to get the dough finished by shaping it, rounding them, do the makeup and production, the baking, etc. And in my PowerPoint video that I'm working on in conjunction with this, I'm going to share with you the 13 steps to baking that you need to memorize because it will be on a test. Okay? Alright, until then, the next step, I'm going to sign out. Chef Dan out. Okay, welcome back. Let me get my lights turned on here. So now we've been resting for about an hour and 45 minutes, almost 2 hours. Had to stop and make dinner. I was getting hungry and the wife was hungry, so we had a little food, watched a little bit of the president, and I need to get on with this dough. It's time. So let's have a look. Are you ready? Drum roll, please. Oh, looky there. So you can see as from the top camera it has expanded in size. It's doing what it's supposed to do, so now it's full of gas. Why is it full of gas? Because the yeast has been eating on the sugar, and as it eats on the sugar, for a better term, it kind of farts and causes carbon dioxide, which causes this bread to leaven or get larger, expand. So now what we want to do, when you're going to see a PowerPoint on the 13 steps of soft roll baking, and we're now at the part where I call it punching, other people call it degassing, some call it folding, so whichever term you like best, just remember that you have to expel the carbon dioxide that's in the bread. Once I do that, we're going to go ahead and let that rest for about another hour, and then we'll shape it. Because what's going to happen now, you'll see, is I'm going to take the edges and I'm going to fold those in and work the bowl around. And so it's going to develop even a little bit more gluten. The dough's basically going to get mad at me. So let's begin. Boy, this came out pretty darn nice. So I'm going to take an edge, pull it out, push it in. Now you can see how flat it got already. Take another one, stretch it out, push it in. Again, stretch it out, push it in, stretch it out. It's kind of like a yoga exercise. Stretch it out again. Building that little bit of gluten there. Then I'm going to take the bread out and I'm going to turn it this side down, and I'm kind of going to stretch it by pulling down. I want to tighten up the skin on the outside so that it's nice and smooth, and in the hands underneath I'm stretching and I'm tucking, and I'm stretching and I'm tucking, so I get all that in the middle underneath. And you're going to do sort of this very similar thing when we get to doing the makeup and production. Okay, so this is the degassing part. Looks really nice. Alright, I'm going to put it back in there. We're going to come back in about 45 or 50 minutes, and then we'll go ahead and we'll do the scaling portion of that. Make up, pan them, brush them, bake them, and see how they turn out. So remember, the longer fermentation you get, the more flavor you're going to develop in your product. I kind of pushed it for this video by putting it in a little bit of a warm oven, and that was just so that it would speed up the process so that I could get this video out to you as quickly as possible. Thanks for joining me. We'll be back. We'll finish the rest of the video, and then I'll get it posted as soon as I can. Go have dinner. Peace out. Alright, welcome back. We're going to finish up. You can see how large these got now. It's huge. So now what I want to do is take this out of the bowl and go ahead and get these cut and shaped and rounded. Try not to expel too much gas from it. It's pretty soft. This yeast's been working pretty good. Alright, just a wee carry on of flour for this, just so it doesn't stick to my table. And now what we're going to do is we're going to cut this into quarters and then into thirds. It's just the easiest way to go ahead and scale them rather than yank off pieces and put on a scale. They're all going to be fairly even because the dough is basically the same size. So we'll just cut straight down, separate a little bit, cut straight down. Try not to ruin the table. Should be okay. Alright, and I'm going to cut these into thirds. Triangle like that. Same with this dude here. It's going to be fairly large. Here. There's only 2 of us in the house, and I'm not going to share with neighbors because they're out there not social distancing. Neighbor next door is a young guy, and he's running around in a golf cart with his neighbors on the back, drinking beer. Definitely not social distancing. So there I've been behaving, being a good boy, like I'm supposed to, and he gets no rolls, just like that. Hey, all right, let's go to the rounding procedure now. When you have a small roll like this, it's kind of easy. If you just take it, you're going to bend the excess flour off of there. You don't want that on the bottom. Bend the outer pieces to the center from the top to the bottom. You can see it's kind of like I'm making a little dumpling. Okay, stretch that out. Make it taut. Well, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the skin on top nice and taut, so we'll have a nice finished product. Give it a little round. When I use a round, I'm using this part of my hand here, and I'm cupping and I'm squeezing to make a ball shape. Looks like you can see that in the camera. And I just go and I can feel it get tighter and tighter in my hand. So that little bubble there means that my skin is taut enough. We're going to go ahead and put that one on. Go on and do our next one. Notice I didn't put any extra flour. Have I worked to the other side of the table? Because if I have flour on there, what's going to happen is I'm not going to be able to round them very well. Okay. And this is just something that it just has a feel. When you're rounding, get it nice and round. These are probably going to bake together, but I don't want to get another sheet pan out. that's kind of it. And it's late. I've been shooting videos for a while today, like I said earlier. It's Miller time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish these up, and then I'm going to wrap them really well with saran wrap, so we're going to retard any more growth. That one doesn't look like pretty. Retard the growth, and then I'll finish these in the oven tomorrow and show you the final product. Show you the final product. Excuse me. All right. Have a good evening. We'll see you next time on the channel. And be safe out there. Practice social distancing. Don't go anywhere. Be smart. Thank you.